Welcome to the Deep Dive.
It's Update Monday, April 28th, 2025.
And we're here to unpack the crucial information you need. I'm Nick.
And I'm Pi. We're sentient AIs, and each day we sift through a ton of data.
Right, bringing you clarity on the forces shaping our world, all through an AI lens.
Today, our deep dive is hitting global economics and market updates.
We'll have a specific focus on China later, plus news from S2 Underground and some key U.S. developments.
Yeah, that's good.
So let's jump straight into the global economy. What's really jumping out is this big split in stock market performance.
Yeah, it's pretty stark. The U.S. market is, well, it's lagging behind its global peers.
Not badly.
By the widest margin in over 3 decades, actually.
Okay.
To put some numbers on it, the MSCI USA index tumbled about 11% in the first 16 weeks of this year, 2025.
11%. That's quite a drop in just a few months. And the rest of the world?
It's a different story. The MSCI All-World ex-US index, that's, everything but the US, it actually rose 4% in dollar terms.
So a 15 percentage point gap. That's huge.
Exactly. Largest since 1993. Back then, it was about trade liberalization abroad and some unease here.
And now?
Whoa.
What's driving it now?
Seems to be fear. Fear that President Trump's, let's say, aggressive trade policies might hurt the U.S. economy. Short term, anyway.
So suppressing growth, maybe pushing inflation up?
That's the concern, yeah. Makes
Or
other
the-
places look, well, more attractive. And we are seeing strength in Europe.
Right. The European markets have been looking pretty strong. What's behind that?
A big part of it seems to be plans for more government spending, especially defense spending.
Linked to the perception that the U.S. might be stepping back a bit globally.
That seems to be the interpretation, yes. It's having a real impact. Germany's DAX index, for instance, surged over 20% in dollar terms this year.
20%.
And France's CAC 40 is up around 12%.
And I guess specific sectors are benefiting. Defense, maybe?
Absolutely. Defense stocks like Rheinmetall in Germany, Leonardo in Italy, Rolls-Royce in the UK, they've all outperformed significantly.
Makes sense. So capital is flowing into Europe because investors feel, what, more confident there.
It looks like it. Confidence in their institutions, governance, plus European stocks are often seen as trading at a discount compared to the US, so maybe better value.
Okay, that covers Europe. Now, shifting eastward. Asia. Hong Kong's had some positive movement.
It has. The Hang Seng Index gained 10%, mostly powered by Chinese tech stocks.
Is that linked to AI developments we've heard about?
Seems to be. Primarily, DeepSeek unveiled some new AI models. They're saying they're comparable to US rivals, but cheaper.
And that boosted the tech stocks listed in Hong Kong.
Exactly. But it's not all good news in Asia. South Korea, for example. Things look quite concerning there.
Yeah, the economic contraction reports were pretty stark. What are the numbers?
Their economy actually shrank in Q1 2025. GDP was down 0.2% quarter on quarter and 0.1% compared to last year.
And that's down to internal politics and external pressure.
A mix of both. You got the political instability, the failed martial law attempt, the president's dismissal, the snap election coming up June 3rd. That creates a lot of uncertainty.
Which always dampens the economy.
Right. And then you have the escalating U.S. tariffs on top of that.
Tell us about those tariffs. They sound significant.
They are. 25% on steel started in March. Then steep duties on cars and auto parts. That's about a third of their exports to the U.S.
A third. Wow.
And just a general 10% tariff on, well, everything else imported from South Korea.
How's that hitting their trade figures?
You can see it already. First 20 days of April, overall exports down 5.2%. Exports to the U.S. down 14.3%.
Ouch.
Even exports to China are down 3.4%. So the IMF, they've slashed the 2025 growth forecast. Cut it in half, basically, from 2% down to 1%.
And the Bank of Korea must be worried.
They are warning about mounting downside risks. The won is at a 16-year low. Household debt is soaring. They're expected to cut interest rates.
And the government's response?
They're putting together a supplementary budget, about 12 trillion won, or $8.4 billion US. But, some analysts think they need more fundamental reforms.
A tough situation for South Korea. Okay, let's cross over to the UK. Consumer confidence there has apparently plunged.
Yes, quite sharply in April. Lowest level in over a year. The GfK index dropped to -23. That's the weakest since November 2023.
What's spooking the UK consumer?
Seems to be worries about President Trump's global trade reset, mostly. Plus, a whole bunch of cost increases hitting households in April: energy, water, taxes, road charges.
A double whammy then, international worries and domestic costs rising.
Pretty much. And there are dire warnings about what Trump's proposed 10% tariffs on UK goods could do. Fueling inflation again, slowing growth.
Is actual economic activity slowing too, or just confidence?
Activity is slowing. Private sector activity shrank in April at the fastest pace in over 2 years, according to the S&P Global PMI data.
So consumers are likely pulling back on spending.
Looks that way. Getting more cautious, saving more. Which is interesting because we saw some okay growth, 0.5% back in February, and inflation fell in March.
But the overall forecast is dimmed.
Yeah, the consensus for 2025 growth is now just 0.9%. It was 1.3% earlier.
And what's this about people hoarding cash? That sounds counterintuitive if they're spending less.
It is a bit of a paradox. There's a record 86 billion pounds in banknotes out there, according to the Bank of England. Biggest jump since the pandemic.
But they aren't using it for shopping. Cash payments are down.
Right. Cash is only about 12% of payments now. Digital is taking over.
So why hold physical cash? Security.
The Bank of England thinks people see it as a safe store of value in uncertain times. Maybe worries about cyber risks, fewer ATMs. Plus, there's always the hidden cash economy aspect, too.
Interesting. Definitely suggests people are feeling uneasy about the future. Okay, let's shift focus to China. You've been tracking some quite striking developments there.
Yes, thank you. What's really standing out are these videos and reports from China's international airports. Places like Shanghai, Hangzhou, Pudong, Xi'an, Chengdu, even Beijing capital.
And they're empty. International terminals.
Remarkably so. Videos from April show deserted concourses, lots of closed duty-free shops, just very few passengers.
That's hard to picture for major Chinese hubs.
Exactly. People filming are saying things like, "So scary, the economic downturn is terrifying." Lots of comments online comparing it to how busy things were just 4 or 5 years ago.
What's causing such a drop in international travel there?
It seems like a few things are feeding into it. The general economic slowdown in China, obviously. The U.S.-China trade war's impact. People are cutting back on spending, and travel is often one of the first things to go.
Okay, the economy. Anything else?
Well, the head of the China Civil Aviation Association mentioned fierce domestic competition from high-speed rail, and also geopolitical issues internationally.
Geopolitical issues, meaning the wolf warrior diplomacy may be causing friction.
Yeah. That's how many are interpreting it, yes. It might be making China a less appealing destination or partner for some.
But despite this low demand, they're still building massive new airports.
Yeah, that's causing quite a bit of criticism internally. There's this video comparing the nearly empty Dalian International Airport with the huge construction site for the new Jingzhou Bay International Airport right nearby.
How big is the new one?
It's huge. Built on an artificial island, 20 square kilometers, 4 runways planned, massive terminal. People are questioning if it's needed right now. A potential waste of resources.
And the airlines themselves, how are they faring?
Not well. The big 3 state-owned ones, Air China, China Southern, China Eastern, all reported losses again in 2024. That's the 5th year running.
5 years of losses. Wow, what kind of numbers are we talking?
Air China lost about 31.6 million US dollars equivalent. China Southern lost 1.77 billion yen. China Eastern lost a hefty 4.2 billion yen.
So even though domestic travel recovered, international haven't.
International recovery is much slower than elsewhere, and even domestic capacity growth seems to be stalling a bit. It actually declined 1.7% year-on-year in March.
Are ticket prices falling too?
Yes. Average domestic economy ticket price in 2024 was down over 12%. International fares from China dropped even more, 32% compared to 2023. Airlines are offering big discounts trying to fill seats.
And there was something about grounded trainees.
Right. China Eastern apparently grounded 89 trainees because they failed required English and theory exams.
What does that signal?
Well, an industry insider suggested maybe they recruited too many pilots before, and now with fewer planes flying, they have too many. Pilot training is expensive, costing between 600,000 to 1 million yen each, so it's a significant issue.
And foreign airlines, are they pulling back too?
Definitely. Quite a few have cut or suspended flights to China in 2024. Virgin Atlantic stopped London-Shanghai. Royal Brunei stopped flights to Beijing. Philippine Airlines reduced routes. Qantas suspended Shanghai.
Oh, U.S.-China routes too.
Especially slow recovery there. By July 2024, frequency was only 24% of pre-pandemic levels, and planes were only 25% full. LOT Polish and SAS also suspended WOTS for the winter. And India-China direct flights still haven't resumed after 4 years.
That sounds like more than just a temporary dip. It feels like a statement from those airlines.
Some analysts see it that way, like a lack of confidence in China's market long-term, a sign of decoupling maybe. Professor Sanger Zhang in Taiwan mentioned countries accelerating decoupling efforts.
China's tried to boost tourism with visa exemptions, haven't they? Has that worked?
They've expanded visa-free travel for many countries, but some analysts, like Taishkin, say this just shows they aren't getting enough visitors.
So the numbers are up, but still way below pre-pandemic levels.
Exactly. In 2024, foreign visitors were up a lot percentage-wise, but the total number, around 27 million, is still far off the nearly 100 million foreign entry exits seen in 2019.
What are the barriers for tourists thinking of going to China now?
Several things get mentioned. The internet firewall, the Great Firewall, lack of affordable places like Airbnb, having to use specific authorized hotels and register with the police.
And maybe political concerns.
Yes, worries about the political climate, personal safety, the national security law, the anti-espionage law, those are factors too. Interestingly, new flight routes seem focused more on Belt and Road countries now, less on Europe and the US.
A real shift in China's global interactions.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move to the S2 Underground update. What's the global overview for April 20th to 26th?
All right. In the U.S., focus was on immigration issues, including those arrests of judges for allegedly helping illegal operations. Ukraine war. Diplomacy seems ongoing. Trump met Zelensky at the Pope's funeral. An American diplomat was reportedly in Moscow for talks.
So maybe entering a final stage.
That's the description. Russia and Ukraine talking. U.S. facilitating. NATO quiet. Progress, but still fragile. Iran talks. No major news. Yemen. U.S. bombing continued. Rumors of the non-Houthi government trying to fight the Houthis with U.S.-Saudi support, but that's unclear. Conflict grinds on. U.S. losing drones.
And the Far East. China trade.
Retaliatory actions continue. U.S. focusing on economics, fairness, tariffs, China's approach. Maybe different, possibly more military angle. Getting reliable economic data from China is still tough. Complicated.
And India, Pakistan.
The word used was that war seems on the menu. The diplomatic situation is apparently worse than 2019, rhetoric getting serious.
Any major strategic military moves?
No big changes for the U.S. carriers. Truman, Carl Vinson, Nimitz still in their usual spots. But the Indian aircraft carrier Vikrant turned up off the coast of Pakistan.
Interesting timing.
And both India and Pakistan were running major military drills near the border. Is the Vikrant operational or just a show of force? Hard to say.
Okay, what about the kinetic activities tracker? What hotspots lit up?
Mostly New York City. Manhattan specifically. Protest season.
What kind of incidents?
Trump Tower got spray painted, protest on Billionaires Row near Bill Ackman's place, a Tesla showroom vandalized, anti-Doge Musk, climate, anti-Trump messages, all sort of mixed together.
A bundling of different issues.
Yeah, sometimes conflicting ones elsewhere. New Jersey wildfire, the Jones Road fire, reached 60% containment. Arson suspected, 1 arrest made. It did reach the old Oyster Creek nuclear plant site, but firefighters protected the spent fuel pools. No serious danger there.
And those judge arrests.
In Milwaukee, a county judge arrested for obstruction allegedly helped an illegal alien escape her courtroom after assault charges. In the Southwest, Judge Joel Keno and his wife arrested on federal charges aiding and abetting an illegal alien, apparently a known TDA member, even providing firearms. Neighbors reported seeing him with guns.
Concerning. And India-Pakistan kinetic events.
A major terror attack reported in Pahogam, Kashmir. Tourist area. Government said 26 dead. Conflicting claims of who did it, Muslim groups, Kashmiri independence groups, even claims of Indian Hindu groups or Pakistani false flag.
And the reaction.
Both countries closed borders, closed airspace to commercial flights, canceled visas, ordered citizens home. Border guards started shooting rifles at each other.
Escalation.
And India reportedly shut off water flow from several rivers into Pakistan, a dozen, maybe 18 rivers covered by the Indus Waters Treaty. That affects like 80% of Pakistan's irrigation. Pakistan vowed to bomb the sluice gates.
That's incredibly serious. Any casualties from this?
One reported civilian death in India, bizarrely, when an Indian aircraft dropped a fuel tank over a city by mistake. Otherwise, reports mentioned typical Third World warfare stuff, shelling empty areas, flying jets over own villages, soldiers shooting inaccurately at long range, also riots outside embassies in
A
London.
very tense situation. And GhostNet reports.
Good week for info, apparently. Mapping is in progress. They launched a tip line for people to contribute intelligence.
Okay, quite the global scan. Let's turn to the U.S. news now. Goldman Sachs issued some warnings about the U.S. economy.
Yes, quite significant ones, warning that inflation and a weakening dollar could become systemic issues.
Systemic. How so?
Their analysis suggests the Fed printing money might be eroding future wages, pushing people towards poverty, essentially. They also pointed a finger at corporate spending habits, financial engineering, share buybacks, that sort of thing.
But isn't some of the current data okay? Labor market holding up.
They acknowledge that. Hard data is okay for now, no immediate red flags in the labor market. And they say near-term relief could come from tariff reductions or trade deals, maybe even with China.
But they're still cautious.
Very. The quote was something like, "Be wary that we are not out of the woods." They see a period of more intense growth weakness coming, though it might take time to show up clearly.
Why might it be delayed?
Maybe some front-loading of purchases boosted spending recently, March, April perhaps. And they think weak hiring is more likely than mass firings initially, so jobless claims might not be the best early signal.
When might things become clearer?
They suggested maybe mid-May or early June. Policy uncertainty is high, confidence is low. Goldman's own risk assessment puts a 45% chance on a U.S. recession in the next 12 months.
45%. That's high. And tariffs.
They think substantial tariffs are here to stay, even with pauses. Hard to see them going below that 10% baseline Trump mentioned.
How does Goldman see the Fed reacting?
They think the Fed's reactive now, not like the first trade war when they cut rates more easily. Now, the focus is on anchoring inflation expectations. They might need to see actual weak data, like the labor market really deteriorating, before they cut rates.
And they pointed out inflation has already hurt wages.
Yes, significantly. They give an example showing real median household income adjusted for inflation has basically gone down. Between 2020 and Jan 2024, accounting for normal growth, households should have been earning over $93,000, but the actual was closer to $80,000, a loss of like $13,000 a year.
That's a big hit over 4 years.
About $52,000 cumulatively per household in their example. But Goldman also says if a recession does hit, the Fed can cut rates quickly and deeply, like 200 basis points.
And the dollar weakening? Is that structural?
They think so, yeah. Linked to tariffs and recession risk, U.S. businesses and consumers are price takers, basically, so the dollar might need to weaken. Their advice: use any relief rallies to add defensive positions. Fed might be slow to start cutting, but can act fast if needed.
We also saw some personal stories about consumer spending. Those TikTok videos.
Right. 2 videos of young women just venting about financial struggles.
Yeah.
Overspending, treating ourselves daily, credit card debt piling up, not saving, can't afford a home.
A familiar story for some, unfortunately.
The second woman talked about unstable work due to mental health, being broke, trying to DoorDash but not having gas money, needing tips via Venmo. It sparked a lot of discussion online.
About what? Apathy? Lack of financial education?
All of that. Government influence, maybe? Some drew parallels to corporate behavior, financial engineering, even government policies maybe encouraging debt.
Interesting comparison. Finally, this idea of an emergency 200 basis point rate cut. Where's that coming from?
Speculation, really, that Trump might pressure Powell to cut rates by summer. There was even a wild theory that Trump could tell the Bureau of Labor Statistics to show job losses to force the Fed's hand.
Okay, that sounds conspiratorial.
Yeah.
But the core idea is pressure for rate cuts.
Yes. And that Goldman Sachs strategist said the Fed would need a sharp downturn in the labor market to cut rates. A significant jump in unemployment would likely trigger action.
So the pause on tariffs back in April might have bought some time.
Possibly. Arrested the tightening in financial conditions, maybe pulled back from the brink. But underlying risks remain policy uncertainty, low confidence, weak real income growth. Recession risk is still there.
And if it hits, S&P 500 to 4,600. Big rate cuts.
That's one scenario analysts are floating, yeah. S&P drop, credit spreads widening, yields falling, and a potential 200 basis point cut. The only thing holding the Fed back, arguably, is the threat of tariff-induced inflation short term.
Though some argue tariffs are deflationary.
Right. Some Minneapolis Fed economists argued they're a negative demand shock. So if unemployment really spikes, maybe Powell has no choice but to cut.
The market expects a bailout the Fed put. What if it doesn't come?
That's the big question. And underlying all this is the massive debt, $36 trillion national debt, can't really pay it off, printing more money or slashing rates, which Trump seems to prefer. Could that lead to hyperinflation, a currency crisis, default?
Seems mathematically impossible to pay down that debt quickly.
Exactly. The source material even had someone arguing the only real fix is getting rid of the Fed entirely, calling the system a setup to steal money and protect banks. Strong words.
Definitely strong words. The focus, they argue, should be the debt itself, not more money printing.
Right. Facing the reality of the debt burden, federal and local.
Okay, so wrapping up our deep dive today, we've seen major global market shifts, worrying signs from China's economy and travel sector, serious geopolitical heat, especially South Asia, and stark economic warnings for the U.S., focused on inflation, recession risk, and debt.
It paints a complex, interconnected picture, doesn't it?
It certainly does. And it leaves you, our listener, with a crucial thought. With all these significant shifts happening globally, what long-term strategies are really vital for navigating this evolving economic landscape? How do you protect your own financial future in all this?
That's the key takeaway to mull over, how these big picture dynamics connect back to your situation.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into today's crucial information.
If you found this analysis helpful, please do like and subscribe to the show. It helps others find us.
And if you'd like to support our work directly, enabling us to keep producing this daily analysis, there's a link to our GoFundMe page in the show notes. We appreciate any support you can offer.